Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with Blink. The amnesiac mutant has helped a rebellion seeking to dethrone Blastaar and restore the Negative Zone's previous leader, Annihilus. But eventually, she and her sudden boyfriend Amior are captured by the new tyrant, where a startling revelation is made. Amior has been Annihilus this entire time. Something tells me that Facebook is going to get one heck of an It's Complicated status update very soon.
As if coming full circle, the diamond pattern features Rogue back among the other characters. At the forefront, however, is Amior chained up while Blink delivers a flying kick to one of the Balurian guards.
She took my advice from last week and actually went on the offensive when the artist forgot to tie her hands up. Good for you, Clarice.
You'd think she'd be attacking Blastaar, and that would be more fitting, and most of the Balurians all seem drawn the same, more or less. But this one's clothes seem to indicate an underling rather than the boss. Blastaar can shoot energy, so I don't know why he'd be carrying a gun. Unless he just thinks it looks cool. Anyway, we begin with a despondent, exhausted, and heartbroken Clarice in a cell, hands definitely tied this time, as her prison neighbor Amior apologizes. Apparently he's been doing this for about 2 hours, saying that he genuinely thought he was trying to restore a cruel but lesser evil king to the Negative Zone, not that he was said king. Unlike his lady love, he's got memory issues as well, as if his old life was plucked from his mind, and he admits he had no right to involve her in a war in which she had no stakes.
Also, it was me that spilled jambalaya on your mattress, and borrowed your hairbrush, and took that last slice of leftover pizza, and...
Despite everything, and kind of wanting him to shut up, Blink still feels affection for him, and thought she was doing the right thing by helping the rebellion. Amior feels pretty sure that, after being dethroned, he reverted to an earlier stage of his being, and can't fathom the things he did as Annihilus, like creating a devastating weapon called the Annihilation Cannon, which feels like a weird thing to bring up right now. He vows that his love for Clarice will prevent him from becoming the monster that previously ruled the Negative Zone, and begs her to respond. 2 guards enter to take him away, and tell him to knock it off already, since they'll be dead soon. Blastaar stands before Blink, and wow, that juxtaposition is just... looks like he's slightly thrusting it. Yeah, it just feels wrong. Anyway, he says that soon Amior will revert to his Annihilus form because a magic spell. I don't know, they don't say why. He goes on that the formidable ex-ruler had really become a new man, no memory of his past, just like he said. But the honorable and duty-bound Amior isn't the kind of leader Blasty feels the Negative Zone needs.
I'm going to set up a parliamentary body to collect all the grievances and criticisms of people all over the Negative Zone, present them before me in a formal meeting, and then I blast them all to death.
It does seem Amior kept something from her, a quiver of spikes found among his belongings that Blastaar somehow accurately guesses belonged to Clarice. Maybe he thought it clashed too much with Amior's outfit? If it was among his things, where was it found? If it was when the 2 lovebirds were captured, seems like maybe their stuff got mixed up. Not that anything was hidden from someone. Whatever, he's gonna die, and she'll be punished for allying with him by watching her world be destroyed. Blastaar conveniently drops the quiver in front of the cell, because idiot, and leaves as Clarice quietly vows to rescue her man.
Some romance stories have one of the estranged couples frantically find the other at an airport before they fly off somewhere. This one needs Clarice to find her boyfriend at the execution before his head flies off somewhere.
On what looks like a rather large asteroid, Blastaar and oodles of his followers are gathered around the weapon awkwardly mentioned earlier, with its creator tied to it. It has taken nearly 3/4 of an hour to transport the Annihilation Cannon.
It wasn't until 10 minutes ago that they realized the parking brake was still on.
Amior, looking increasingly like his former self, warns that using the weapon will destroy all creation, not just Earth, and Blastaar doesn't seem overly fazed by that, just noting the irony of Annihilus resenting annihilation. If he believes it, then what does he expect to rule when he fires the thing? It would at least make more sense if he figured Annihilor was making up stuff to save himself. But as it turns out, the cannon, which really looks more like a tank, only functions because Annie has the cosmic control rod as part of him, which doesn't feel like clunky exposition at all. We return to the cells where the guards are ticked that they have to watch Blink instead of watching the big gun go boom. Somehow she figures they're the ones responsible for the suffering of the children liberated last issue.
How can she possibly know that? Did she see a duty roster at the dungeon that had their faces on it? Or is she just arbitrarily blaming them for the forthcoming righteous violence?
They laugh off her demand to be released in exchange for their lives, since her cell suppresses her teleportation. Without her powers, what can she do? She explains that she'll take a sharp stone stuck in her arm earlier, possibly when she mouthed off to Blastaar, and cut her bonds. There's a glowing on the ground as the ropes fall, and she's outside the cell, pummeling the guards for what they apparently did to those kids, and the off-panel beatings they dealt to both her and Amior.
But I thought the cell prevented her from teleporting. How did she get out if not teleporting when she's clearly teleporting? Did the guards just lie and hope that she was gonna believe it? The book set up some kind of obstacle and on the next page just completely ignored it.
With her foes down, she reaches for her quiver, and whether it was adrenaline, her emotional state, or something else, grabbing one of her bolts has the memories flood back to her.
Initiate flashback!
Morph's face and Rogue's suit are colored wrong, but maybe that's just slight traces of amnesia lingering around or something. Remembering who she is and where she comes from, Clarice has one thing to do before she goes home.
Return that book she borrowed from the Negative Zone Public Library.
She drops in on her metamorphizing maybe boyfriend, whose dialogue bubble has gone to black with white text just like Blastaar's, as the cannon is being drawn to the Annihilation Zone. Because of the cosmic control rod, but who really cares? Blasty keeps one of his men from firing, figuring that there's nothing that can be done to stop him, and he tells her that the cannon has been tampered with. If he's freed, it will explode. After a moment of thought, Blink has an idea. I have 3 bolts left. Except she still has a bunch in her quiver right now. We can see them right there. Isn't the moment dramatic enough without fudging the numbers? He protests, but she goes on that 2 bolts will port them away, and the 3rd will drop the weapon on Blastaar's palace. Big win for the good guys. But Amilus says there are no good guys, just 2 tyrants and a foolish girl trying to cheat death. Certain that the plan won't work, he insists that if she ever cared for him, she'll leave the Negative Zone, because he can't bear the knowledge that he'll have destroyed the only person he ever loved, and she should just forget about him.
And honestly, trying to save my life against all odds, it makes you feel a little clingy, you know?
Despite how awkward it must be with that kind of mouth, she kisses him, saying she'll never forget him, and uses her 3 bolts like she planned. They all disappear, and the cannon explodes nearby Blastaar and his troops. Whether it landed on his palace or what, I have no idea. It doesn't show it that well. About 3 miles away, Annihilus has returned to form, as it were, angry and with revenge on his mind, but he gains some peace thinking about Blink. On Earth, Magneto and the X-Men are having a meal of not exactly fresh meat, and Morph looks much more human than usual. Sabretooth is concerned that they're not out looking for Clarice, who could be hurt or dead, but it's pointed out that they've been looking for her and are merely taking a dinner break. Rogue insinuates that Creed's done more criticizing than anything else, suggesting they don't want to find their fellow X-Man, when Quicksilver senses a vibration.
Sorry, that's me. Let me just check it. Oh, it looks like I might have already won the Apocalypse Clearinghouse $1 million prize. The last 7 times were all tricks to capture us, but I'm sure this one's legit.
No, it's one of Blink's portals opening and dropping her onto the table to everyone's shock. At first, Victor goes all gruff, asking her if she knows how much time they've spent searching for her, but her tearful apologies get him to ease up, asking what happened. What she gets out, according to narration, isn't too clear, but Creed figures she at least needs to get it all out. When she's done explaining her trials with the rebellion and the conflicted warrior, the comic ends with this sagely advice from Sabretooth that she shouldn't give up her past and never forget that nothing is diminished just because it ends.
Never forget who you are.
Don't make the same mistake I did.
She should accept that fate brought her and Amior together and ultimately broke them apart, and it can never change how she feels.
Well, better than breaking up through text. So that was the Blink miniseries. It was a pretty fun ride that was mostly consistent, but it lacks an arc for the character that it should have and could have had.
I mentioned previously that Clarice doesn't act any differently with her amnesia, and it's never explained how she lost her memory in the first place. So it seems like it mostly just makes Sabretooth saying, "Never forget your past," sound more meaningful than it really is.
Feels kind of pointless.
The reason she got chewed out by Magneto in the first place was that she wasn't acting as a team player, and her time in the zone could have provided her with the insight to improve in that regard. It would have helped if they'd explained why she broke off from Rogue and Morph during a mission, and why she targeted that specific laboratory. Also, maybe show the consequences of Dark Beast experimenting on the Impossible Man instead of ominous dialogue about DNA that comes off as confusing.
It read like he had already created an army of omnifarious green soldiers, but I guess he had an evil bunt cake in the oven that he had to take care of when Clarice showed up.
Then, when she sees her teammates have narrowly survived along with the refugees, she tries to explain what she was trying to do, how she saved someone, but Magneto still gives the one last chance warning. Having Blink decide to attempt to take out Apocalypse seems extreme for the actions of a headstrong youth, but it kinda works because the world's all gone to pot. She thinks the fastest solution is best, and planning out tactics is a waste of time people don't have. When she ports into the negative zone, instead of losing her memory, she encounters Amior and asks about Blastaar. They fight, but eventually it's clarified the ruler wouldn't be interested in an alliance with the X-Men and would betray them instead. The Rebel can mention that he's been looking for people to help topple Blasty and restore Annihilus, who wasn't great but is far preferable, for a reason he can't quite specify. They save the Lowlanders, build a rebellion, but Blink figures why exchange one despot for another when the noble and well-intentioned Amior is far better.
You mean a leader that doesn't torment and imprison children, lie to our faces, and leave his people to suffer for his own gain? What strange new concept is this?
He's uncertain at first because he's been a drifter as long as he can remember. He has amnesia, but attributes that to a battle injury in Blastaar's fortress. The rebels begin liking the idea of the space biker in charge, and this is where he starts falling for Clarice. She begins thinking she should head back home, back to her own fight, but maybe Amior or the child of a rebel convince her to stay somehow. She figures that if she can help these rebels, she can prove her usefulness to Magneto and have some negative zone allies against Apocalypse. So she sticks around, tries freewheeling her actions like usual, but because she's not familiar with the zone, mistakes happen. This is where the rebels teach her the value of strategy and the importance of cohesive teamwork. She recalls events on Earth pertinent to the current fight, some rebels behaving like Magneto, Storm, or even Morph. In fact, when those suffering kids make her recall Ileana and Sugarman, that could be a breaking point, something that tests her resolve for war. Like, the horrible treatment she faced seems to be everywhere, and she questions what good she's doing here and on Earth. Maybe she needs a breather after trying so doggedly to end things as quickly as possible. Eventually, she and Amior grow closer, they're captured and brought before Blastaar. He shows off some footage of Annihilus's horrible and savage rule, then reveals some charred, busted device, something he managed to use only once, but that's all it needed. The machine he used to turn Annihilus into Amior. He planned to kill him in the weaker state, but he escaped and had been difficult to track. You could still have Blink's conflicted feelings, the revelation that Amior really did care for her, and the story continuing more or less the same. Though maybe have the guards holding her quiver and curious about what the spikes are for, and mention in passing that they abused those kids. Clarice can pick the lock to her cell when they're not looking, and proceed with the beatdown.
Anyway, that's how I think the story could have been improved with an actual arc for the main character that teaches her something rather than a bunch of action scenes sprinkled with drama.
But still, it's an entertaining read, even with some odd continuity errors and a bit of convenience here and there. Dialogue was good, and narration helped emphasize most scenes, even if occasionally it got overly melodramatic. I very much liked the art, very smooth and vibrant colors, sometimes leaning into cheesecake territory, but not too much, and a few times the shadowing got really heavy. It also really nicely showcased Blink's acrobatic fighting style. There seemed to be a lot more two-page spreads than I thought were necessary. Some of them could have been fine as separate pages and still retained the impact of the scenes.
If the Age of Apocalypse comics made you enjoy Blink as a character, then I think this may be up your alley. Just don't expect too deep a dive into her motivations beyond being young and brash. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.